Hello, and welcome to UnBecoming with Elena Joy. Today's episode is a reading of today's article, The Energy It Takes to Be Understood, How High-Achieving Leaders Burn Out Behind the Mask. It is part 2 of our last episode called Stop Reading My Face. We're exploring one of the 5 capacities that are the root causes of burnout. One time at a work retreat, I spent 20 minutes rehearsing how to say, "I need help," in a team meeting. And I still didn't say it. Not because I didn't have the words, but because the mask I'd worn for years, the one that says I've got it under control, it was louder and more practice than the part of me that needed support. Relatable? This is what burnout looks like when you're high functioning, chronically misunderstood, but you're still getting work done, so you're, quote, fine. Recently, I shared a vulnerable moment with a former girlfriend to show how old coping strategies can quietly push us toward burnout. Burnout? But if I'm still getting out of bed in the morning, still functional and everything, this isn't burnout. It's just exhaustion, right? For many high achievers, it's not the weight of responsibility that's the problem. These incredible humans have been handling huge loads since the moment the kindergarten teacher realized they had a mini adult in the room. For these leaders, and maybe for you, burnout is more about the energy it takes just to be understood. And when that energy runs out, the people around us, they don't see exhaustion, they see chaos and confusion. Often, they stop trying to understand. You feel that, right? Keep reading. What if your chaos was brilliance in disguise? All right, this might be the part that stings a little, and whether you're diagnosed as neurodivergent, you suspect you might be, or if you're neurotypical with a whole lot of quirks, you're meant to hear this. Pretty much every department I work with has a Bob. Bob fits the external stereotype of business leader. Male, white, straight, steadily promoted, and by all measures, successful. When you're introduced to him during your first day on the job office tour, your guide whispers, "Bob's a bit intense. Stay out of his way and you'll be fine. He's not a bad guy or anything. It's just the way he is." After a while, you learn Bob is obsessed with control, socially inflexible, sensitive to certain sound and light, and deeply particular about where he sits in meetings. He also produces incredible, high-quality work. Executives love him. Have you worked with a Bob? Yeah, me too. Now, what if Bob were a Black woman? Would she still be considered a high performer? Would she still be protected, promoted, and praised? According to experts like Dr. V. Boykin, it is statistically unlikely. That link is in the show notes. We all, well, the majority of us, we all wish that weren't true. We want to work in a society where each employee is evaluated solely on the quality of their work. But it's just not reality. And as we say at Latitude, almost hourly these days, I swear, we cannot prevent our burnout if we're not willing to radically acknowledge our reality. It's worth asking yourself, if your identity is lined up like Bob's, would you spend less energy performing? That extra energy, the explaining, the adjusting, the smiling through it, that's what we mean when we talk about performance in the context of burnout. Code switching at work. We all do it. We've all been doing it since elementary school. But have we been safe enough to grow out of it? Code switching is consciously or unconsciously changing your behavior, language, or appearance to fit into the dominant culture. It's often about survival, safety, or professional advancement, but it can come at a steep emotional cost. Common examples of code switching at work include altering your speech patterns, like using corporate speak, avoiding slang or cultural references, softening your tone or vocabulary to sound less aggressive, more professional, or even more educated. Changing hair, dress, or appearance. over-explaining, or pre-apologizing. We've all done that before. Avoiding cultural references, like not mentioning holidays or foods or relationships or traditions tied to your identity. And even adopting a neutral accent to sound more palatable in meetings. Do any of those sound familiar? Masking at work is more intentional, and many of us do it, but not all. Opposite of code switching, masking is often a behavior that we learn and take on as we mature. Sometimes it becomes such a part of you that you can have a hard time knowing where your mask ends and you begin. It's the conscious suppression of parts of your natural self to avoid judgment, discomfort, or misinterpretation. It's common for neurodivergent folks, but certainly not exclusive to them. Common examples of masking at work include mimicking others' behavior so that you don't stand out, suppressing sensory needs, monitoring facial expressions, hiding emotional responses, and definitely avoiding asking too many questions. Both code switching and masking are subtle forms of mental labor. An internal disconnection can tax your cognitive capacity every day, and likely have been for years. If you're constantly performing to survive or succeed, you are burning energy just to be allowed in the room, not even doing the work yet. What changes in your life and career if none or very little of your cognitive capacity is being taken up by code switching and masking? What cognitive capacity really means. Sidebar. To learn more about the 5 capacities for burnout prevention, you can check out the summary article on our Substack. But back to cognitive capacity. It's the ability to think clearly, make decisions with confidence, and trust your mind in the moment, even in systems that try to distract or distort you. Cognitive capacity has a focus on mental clarity, decision-making, and strategic thinking. Some key questions within it are things like, can I think clearly under pressure? Can I prioritize what really matters? Am I making decisions instead of spinning or stalling? Core functions of cognitive capacity are mental clarity, decision-making, strategic thinking, cognitive flexibility. And without it, you might see things like indecision, overthinking, chronic overwhelm, scattered thinking, or mental fog. Cognitive capacity helps leaders move from reaction to direction. And it's common sense, right? I mean, at a certain point every week, we all just feel too depleted to think clearly. Our cognitive capacity is toast. But the fact is, most people don't realize their cognitive capacity is a resource until it's gone. And oftentimes performance is eating way more of their cognitive capacity than they ever realized. Every time you mask, every time your brain has to kick into code switching mode, every time you have to focus to translate someone else's unspoken expectations or try to preempt how you'll be misunderstood, anytime you do any of that, you're burning your cognitive capacity. Now, losing cognitive capacity for humans who regularly have multiple streams of thought going, like in my previous story, it can be confusing and even chaotic. When we're low on cognitive capacity, the way our brains work can feel chaotic. And we're often interpreted that way by the people in our lives. Chaos. However, when we have plenty of capacity and have released old habits that are not authentic to who we are now, that chaos becomes something else entirely. Cognitive brilliance. Let us not ignore the reality that some of the most brilliant minds of our time have been wildly chaotic, possibly neurodivergent, and yet because they fit the standard on the outside, the brilliance was lauded and the chaos ignored. It doesn't have to be about doing too much. For many of us, burnout is about doing too much invisible labor for too little return. Think back to my trauma flashback moment in the previous article. The moment I began to understand the cost of growing up chronically misunderstood, the cost of the hypervigilance that followed me into adulthood. That's the real cost of performing, the energy it takes to be understood. Now, I am not saying that we should all stop performing at our jobs and in our relationships immediately. You do not need to prevent your burnout by immediately showing up to work as your unbridled, brilliant, and wildly chaotic self. Let's be real. Those folks ain't ready. But we are doing a lot of that performance because, frankly, we have to. So let's do it intentionally. As power dynamics expert Kasia Urbaniak said, with awareness comes choice. Let's practice some self-awareness so we can choose when to invest that cognitive capacity to perform and enjoy the returns, and when to save that capacity because the returns aren't worth it. To do that, I ask my clients to start by answering some questions with radical self-honesty. First, ask yourself, where do I spend the most energy explaining myself? What situations allow me to trust my brain without editing or second-guessing? What professional and social interactions leave me feeling like I just did a dog and pony show for someone? And then ask yourself with no judgment or shame, what is that costing me? What could be available to me if I didn't? And finally, most importantly, ask yourself how much of this performance behavior is leftover patterns and habits that are not authentic to who I am now. That is the critical unbecoming piece. When you stop burning half your mental fuel just to fit in, you will be shocked at what's left over. Creativity, calm, precision, presence. You do not have to communicate like someone else to have the impact you want to have. Learning how to be aligned with who you really are right now is the key to living your legacy. Burnout doesn't play favorites, but it does play differently. Burnout is a shared risk for all of us, but a deeply individual, personal experience. Yours won't look like your boss's or mine, and burnout's rarely caused by something as simple as too much to do and not enough time. We humans are far more complex than that. Becoming aware of their performance and preventing cognitive drain is the first step for many of us to prevent burnout. You don't need to do anything other than be aware. And then be intentional about when you invest the energy performing and when you don't. That's all I want for you. All right, well, that and overflowing cognitive capacity. Because how would the world change if we all had full cognitive capacity? When your cognitive capacity isn't drained, you can experience laser focus, full presence, making thoughtful decisions with confidence, trusting your mind in the moment, any moment. And all of this while working in systems that are designed to extract as much as productivity out of you as they can. Imagine if we each took all of our brilliance and harnessed it for impact. Instead of reining it in for others, imagine what could change if we treated our own brilliance the way the world treated Albert Einstein, Steve Jobs, and Bob. That is the world I want to live in. You? Next week, we're diving into relational capacity and the ways connection can either drain or restore us. Forward this on to someone whose brilliance keeps getting misread. Hit subscribe, and let's keep building a world where authenticity is strategy, chaos is sacred, and burnout gets no applause. I hope you enjoyed this, fam. Be good to yourselves. I appreciate you.